Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I want to keep this story relatively short because I kind of wanted to make it a bit more of an honest and sort of an open debate. And this was on the front cover of the Times newspaper circa 17th of the 2nd, 2022. Teachers told to avoid the biased views of BLM, Black Lives Matter, and Stonewall. And this was written by Matt Dayton, the Home Affairs editor, and Emma Yeomans. So, teachers must avoid using material from campaigning organizations such as Black Lives Matter and Stonewall that may have partisan political views. Government guidance on impartiality states schools are already required to teach in an impartial way, but new guidance from the Department for Education advises teachers on how to tackle sensitive issues in a politically impartial way. Nadim Zawi, the Education Secretary, said the guidance would prevent contested theories from being promoted as fact, but teaching unions warned that it would impinge, on freedom of speech by limiting what schools felt comfortable about teaching. Government sources said the move was designed to combat the politicalizations of sensitive topics such as race and gender by campaigning groups. Organizations don't have a monopoly on the moral stance of these issues, a source said. The guidance urges teachers to be particularly sensitive when referring to historical figures with contested legacies. The DFE, the Department of Education, insiders cited furious over lesson plans shared by thousands of teachers that posed the question, Winston Churchill, hero or war criminal? The guidance states, when teaching younger students about historical figures with contested legacies, it may be advisable to focus on what these figures are most renowned for and factual information about them. If teachers think pupils may not be able to understand the contested aspects of their lives, beliefs, and actions. One scenario refers to lessons on racism and cautions that teachers should be aware that campaign groups such as Black Lives Matter cover partisan political. Well, it just ends with cover partisan political situations. I would say to begin partisan political views, since it was what was referred to earlier. Now, this does continue on pages 2 and 3, but I bring this up because I did want to ask a question when it comes to the way educations work, or rather how certain things like how are, for example, in a religious school, like in a Catholic school, what exactly do you teach children? Because or teenagers, what do you teach them specifically about religion? Because certainly when I was studying for my GCSEs, we had to learn terms about nuclear families, about multicultural societies. We learned a lot of stuff about that. And I don't know, technically, could you argue, because this is when Michael Gove was the education secretary at the time, and since he's not particularly very well liked by quite a lot of teachers anyway, it could be argued that are they having to teach people this way to make sure that that children are not becoming radicalized, or what is the motive for teaching people about multicultural societies? Because in my mind, I like to argue from one point of view that I think it's very simple. Don't be a dickhead, don't be mean, don't be racist towards each other, regardless of the color of their skin. Now, I know immediately what you'll be saying, that's much easier said than done, but then it comes to stuff like history, and I studied history at GCSE, and it was true, I'm going to absolutely go on a limb here, I'm going to say this for fact right now, that for the most part we were taught about events that were happening, such as the Roaring Twenties in America, the Wall Street crash, the slump in Britain, the foundations of the National Health Service. We were learning a lot about events that happened. We weren't necessarily focusing on any major political figures like Hoover or Churchill, and mostly speaking about Churchill not in his actions during World War II. We're talking about his acts during as Prime Minister. Now, again, you could argue that trying to shift it and not talk about certain political figures seemed relatively key, but it would also be a mistake to say that by not mentioning them or mentioning certain key figures or certain movements like the Jarrow March, for example, ignoring stuff like that is in many ways going to almost be seen as almost impartial, in the way that we saw in this article about teachers told to avoid the biased views of Black Lives Matter and Stonewall. Now, the question I do want to ask, ladies and gentlemen, and whether or not you want to say Black Lives Matter and Stonewall are biased is entirely up to you, but I just want to leave off by asking this very simple question, ladies and gentlemen. Is impartiality censorship? Or is censorship impartiality? I think there's quite a lot to say about that, because in my view, if you're told to be impartial, you are sort of told to mention certain things about someone, but not mention other things. Now, in my mind, I don't think that's technically being biased, because you are mentioning this person, yada yada yada, but you're not mentioning, you're mentioning A, B, and C, but you're not talking about E, D, and F, if that makes any sense. On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, well, what is the other option here? Because, well, is this going to be the sort of thing that kids will be learning when they're doing their GCSEs? Who knows what they're being told right now, or rather, what they are being told about certain specific people? It's a good case in point, ladies and gentlemen. And bear in mind that at one point, in fact, you could argue it's either in 2 days from now or even 25 years from now. All of this will be part of our history as well. This is the stuff we'll be looking back on. We'll be looking back on stuff like the pandemic, Partygate, tensions boiling over between Russia and Ukraine. We'll be talking about this sort of stuff for many years to come. And they'll probably be also looking into stuff like press censorship when it comes to English language courses. You never know, ladies and gentlemen. You never know. But I still, again, what do you guys think? Please let me know, and I'll hope to see all of you guys again in our next video. Take care, and good night.